So hello, everyone. My name is Joe Levy. I am the Associate Vice Provost of Accreditation and Quality Improvement at Excelsior University. Excelsior University is primarily online and it's based in Albany, New York. I personally live in Chicago, Illinois, but I travel to campus periodically. And I'm here to talk to you about assessment, a bit more about my background. Promise not to drone on too much, but I came up on the student affairs side of the house. I got my master's in student affairs and higher education. And then I've worked for educational technology companies to help institutions use assessment management tools, build better surveys, build better rubrics, enhance their assessment cultures. I've been a coach with the National Institute for Learning Outcomes Assessment, and also worked at a number of different institutional types to do this work. And in addition to assessment, my role in working at an educational technology company and consulting with a number of schools then landed me several different jobs at different institutions that needed to revamp their assessment process because they were in trouble with their accreditor or because they had an upcoming accreditation visit. And so not only did I get to continue to build on my assessment skills, but then got very heavily involved in accreditation. And I eventually got my doctorate in higher education leadership. And yeah, I've spent my career doing academic affairs, student affairs assessment, credit for prior learning work, and all sorts of accreditation, every level and every type, for almost every discipline. But that's me. That's my background. I'm really excited to be here to talk to you all about um, this topic and some of the work we've been doing at my institution, because I think it's a good example of how we can um, do good, meaningful assessment work that is robust, but also streamlined, and how we can get a lot from a little, and how we can pull things together and make improvements that can still meet the needs for assessment people, meet faculty needs, and also meet our external entities, what needs they may have. Um, so I'll give a little bit of history of my team at my institution and set the stage, but I'll also make sure to balance a bit so that I'm talking generally too, and it's not just, oh, look what Excelsior did, because I really think there's principles from this work that folks can look to apply. And I'll share some resources as well and have some interaction along the way, again, to keep it pertinent for you all and not just show and tell what we're doing at my institution. But I want to start by talking about my team. I lead the Learning Outcomes and Quality Improvement team, and we're a multifunctional unit. We do all things assessment, so student affairs, academic affairs. We also do program review. We do all things accreditation. And I also have credit for prior learning or prior learning assessment under my umbrella as well. And the MO for us is that we're here to help, right? So we're not only leading program review, assessment, accreditation efforts, but we're also working with our teams across campus to support curriculum work as we do redevelopments, as we revision our gen ed, as we work to infuse more equity considerations and content throughout our curriculum. We're also working on transparency and capacity building, something I was talking about a little bit before the session started, and really trying to be consultants to the extent we can. So in different committees and meetings, and trying to be those ambassadors of quality assurance and continuous improvement, and principles around student learning. So that's really the bottom line. We are always telling people, whether it's assessment, accreditation, credit for prior learning, or anything in between, our whole team, the bottom line for us is we're pushing quality and we're pushing continuous improvement. And those are, values and standards that we look to hold for the institution, which then gets us in a lot of different conversations, a lot of different initiatives for the university, well beyond the primary pieces that we work with. But it's important context for then the presentation as well. So in setting the stage for where we are and what we do, you all may have, this being a typical faculty experience, right? So every time a faculty member teaches a course, they get insights on student learning via grades and observations. They know student preferences, right, from course evals. They also have an opportunity to think about the course and review that information in terms of, maybe they inherited this course, or maybe it's their first time teaching it, and so they have some thoughts. There's some things that could potentially be improved. And knowing that not only our part-time faculty doing that potentially for multiple courses a term, but our full-time faculty are doing that as well. There's then principles from a program perspective of thinking about outcome and curricular mapping information that has your articulated program learning outcomes, and then has alignment with those learning outcomes to any university or broader learning outcomes for your institution, but then also has learning outcome alignment down too, from the program level down to the course level, which potentially is in the syllabi or course maps. But in addition to the outcome to outcome alignment, there's also some specific measures that we can point to throughout the curriculum that are demonstrations of learning, or places where we see students demonstrate the knowledge, skills, and behavior that they're supposed to gain throughout the program. We try and mark some of these throughout our curriculum or outcome maps, or they can be part of your assessment plan. But the other piece too is that every program should be very clear and consistent with their program identity information. Being consistent in the catalog, on the website, internal documents, all of that should be up to date, aligned, and informative. And of course, that's the situation for all of you, right? So I wanted to know, like, if you were thinking about your outcome maps and curriculum maps for your programs, are they all centralized, right? Do you know where to find, or if you asked your department chairs or your faculty to give you a list of signature or key assessments aligned to PLOs, or would they be able to provide that? And when's the last time you looked at like your catalog, your website, and internal documents for consistency around your programs? Feel free to put some thoughts in the chat. You don't have to out yourself. These can be rhetorical questions, but it's important to think about. And I admit, at our institution, we had all of these. We couldn't answer all these questions. Our curriculum maps were all over the place. Sometimes we'd talk to our department chairs and they didn't even know they had a curriculum map. And then when we'd look for assignments, what was really emphasized for some programs was just the end of program cumulative capstone assignments, which is great for demonstrating that end of learning experience and making sure when they leave with your degree, they have the learning they need. But the problem with that is, if that learning's going well, there's an assumption that their learning journey was a smooth sailing to get there, right? But we also know that to get to this endpoint, you can go like this. You can have a lot of ups and downs. But also, if that endpoint is low, right? What if we're not seeing what we expected before they graduate? Well, it's also not fair to just assume everything in the program was terrible or ineffective, right? There could have been key things along the way, that those low points in the journey that really then resulted in that low score. But if we're not looking at multiple measures, we may never know. Doing consulting, working with many institutions, I know this is pretty normal, which is also a little bit sad, but you can take solace in the fact that you're not alone. And we can all start from a place of trying to get better, trying to raise the bar, trying to ensure some consistency. Another thing, too, that we can think about is the information that's available. And there is a lot of it, right? I mean, this is actually a slide that I shared our internal staff and faculty. Do you know you have all these metrics available to you, right? Because sometimes faculty say, oh, I wish I had this report, or I wish I had more data. And it's like, you already have all of this information. Now, maybe it's not in a nice served up format for you, but you already have all this stuff. And knowing about it sometimes is half the battle. But also, it's the kind of thing, too, that just like curriculum maps may be unknown where they are, that they exist, it's also been a piece where sometimes it's really powerful to just inform people where these metrics are, where they're being reported, how they can access them, what the definitions of them are. I also posed this situation. I was in front of a faculty group and I asked these questions. I said, can you fill in these gaps, right? That consistently your college and school meetings are held at blank frequency, right? Like monthly, quarterly. And you're typically discussing these types of data. So I ask people, like, who can fill that in? And you may not be surprised to hear that I didn't get everyone's hands raising. And then we go to the department level. Well, what about you? What about your department? Do you know? How frequently are you consistently holding meetings? And what data are you discussing? Again, there were not strong, confident hands raised throughout the room. And finally, I was again talking about this a little bit before the session started, but we have these faculty advisory committees, and these are collections of faculty members that are there, but also we'll have the industry advisory committees as well, where we'll have a mixture of employers, community partners, alumni, and these are things where, again, some programs are having these meetings religiously, every month or every quarter, and they are discussing certain types of data. But when we look across our portfolio and across our institution, there wasn't a lot of consistency there. And so this is a lot of some of the pieces I walked into. And again, not to say things were a complete mess, right? I will say, again, connecting back to my background, I did not want, our institution was not under, we did not have accreditation problems. Actually, we had just gone through our Middle States visit, passed with flying colors. Which is also, something about accreditation. if people see this behavior as normal, then they're not necessarily going to count you down for it. But coming into the situation, I knew there were things we could elevate for more consistency and more foundation for everybody, right? And not just the programs that have their act together or who have a lot of experience in this space. So I'll turn the tables a bit to you, like before. Again, it's up to you, challenge by choice in terms of what you'd like to share. But, how about you? Is this stuff also ringing true? Is there inconsistency in terms of frequency and data being discussed at meetings? Do you have like a hierarchy of, there's department meetings and there's school meetings and there's college meetings and there's some alignment with those? Do you have specific industry advisory groups? One, do they even exist? Should they exist? And if they do exist, are they meeting frequently? Right? These are all good questions that we could be asking, and things that we could be looking to hold ourselves accountable to. Because especially if we say that there's a specific purpose for those pieces, but we're not actually doing them consistently, well, then we may not be bearing out that purpose, right? And truly getting the benefits from what we're hoping to see. And so I'm very transparently sharing these things because I also want you to know these are not impossible things to, move past or even to minimize. Maybe you can't completely solve them, but you can at least minimize these barriers and change the culture relatively quickly. And so, one of the things that I also shared back with folks was that we have all these possible perspectives, right? As we think about who all can have a voice, who all can have a say, where all we can be getting input. I mean, this is just a fraction of the things we could be doing, right? And this isn't even quantifying the number of entities per respective group, but there's so many perspectives we can be tapping into and leveraging with respect to programs and the health and state of them. Speaking of, this is what we put out as kind of a vision for our programs. We said, ideal state is you have learning outcomes, industry relevant, aligned. You have signature assignments, which we've covered a little bit. You have clear reporting expectations as to like when reporting happens and what we should be getting out of it. You also are looking at your staffing effectiveness, right? Programs can be cut to the bone and just have like one full-time faculty member, and that thing can be really tough. Or it's one full-time faculty member looking over multiple programs and an army of part-time faculty. And so we have to think about that in terms of the state of the program to make sure it's balanced and appropriate. We also need to think about student success and sustainability for the program. We also need to make sure that there's some ownership in terms of our subject matter experts for the program, that it's not something that it's just designed and handed off, but that people feel like, yes, this is my program and we built this, or we own these things. Again, we need some consistent reporting, not just clear reporting expectations, but that we're following those expectations and consistently doing the reporting, and that we have then data-informed strategy for continuous improvement. Well, as you may imagine, at our institution, we didn't have these things happening consistently. We had some gaps with our learning outcome alignment. As I mentioned before, for signature assignments, sometimes we just had those outlined in the capstone or the end of the programs and not throughout. We didn't necessarily have clear reporting expectations. Some reports didn't have targets, and so it was very subjective as to what these results are and what they mean. We weren't in any consistent way looking at staffing effectiveness. Student success was not as connected as it could be. Faculty were separately thinking about student success, and all our student affairs and student service people were separately thinking about student success. We weren't connecting the dots and getting those people together in the same room to talk about, student success and student well-being inside and outside of the classroom. There were some sustainability questions that we couldn't answer, and so forth and so on, right? And so again, being very open and honest in these pieces, not saying all of our programs struggled in this way, but when we looked across the portfolio of our institution, we couldn't consistently say like all these things were in place, and that was a problem for me and for others too. Thankfully, it wasn't just me coming in and holding some really high bar of expectations, but really these were discussions we had within the institutional community, and people agreed these are things we want, right? And we want to change that current state. So we set then about on a 3-phase journey, which is a little bit like a Goldilocks journey, and that'll make more sense as we go along. But it started with program review reporting phase 1. And so with this phase, we made one reporting timeline. So previously, because this work had been distributed, there were people that were sometimes doing their program review in the summer, some were doing it in the fall, some were doing it in the winter. It just really kind of depended, which, as you can imagine, then makes it tough to take a step back and think about the health of the portfolio if reports are coming in at different times throughout the year. We also look to make one report. So programs were doing a program review report, and they were separately doing an assessment report. And then our accredited programs were also sometimes doing separate reporting for accreditation. We streamlined that all into one form. So we have this one program review form that includes a section on assessment and then has a section about accreditation, so that if there's key metrics or things that you have to report to your accreditor, you could just put in this report, or acknowledge that there's a separate report if you have to follow specific formatting or put it in a different form there. But to try and give faculty a break so they're not having to juggle multiple things. And we also made sure that there were some hard-coded metrics with clear targets with respect to success, so that it wasn't so subjective in how the program's doing. And we also made sure that we had some self-service dashboards. So not only was it just a data dump, but they could play around and dynamically look at their data for more insights beyond just single metrics, and indications of whether it's an area of strength or an area of concern. And I'm sorry, one of the other things too for this light bulb piece is we also made sure to include in the reporting process that they meet with complementary partners across campus. They meet with marketing, they meet with admissions, they meet with student services, career services, so that, again, when they're thinking about the health of their program and the learning journey of their students, they have insights from across the institution for that. And we saw a lot of great beneficial byproducts. As I said, there was some great collaboration across the teams. It empowered faculty to be storytellers for their programs and to own the data for their programs and talk about and set a vision for changes they're going to make. And it also, by having the reporting process on one timeline and consistent in the metrics, it allowed conversations across programs, schools, and colleges around the same time, because they're all going through it. And it also was timed in a way that our leadership could go through these things and get all this insight for their portfolio of our academic programs just in time to head to budget and strategic planning session. And so that was incredibly powerful, because so many programs have a laundry list, right? A never-ending list of changes they want to make to their program. but sometimes when they have this list or when they pitch it, it's not the right time, right? Or they have this data in this report, but either budgeting season has just ended or it's so far away that they get kind of put off. And so this was a very intentional timing effort of putting the reporting just before we go into budget and strategic planning so that leadership will have these insights. And so this is just a quick example of how, for different programs, you can see we assigned someone from the Loki team. We had reps from the other parts of the university too, where, we're even saying, like with that marketing example, like this person helps with section 1 of the report. This person helps with section 3. So really trying to also make best use of their time, of the collaborators as well. So our report had multiple sections. The first part was program overview. Second part was faculty and staffing. Third part was enrollment and revenue. Fourth was student support and outcomes. Fifth was assessment of student learning. Sixth was in those program specific circumstances. So, the accreditation pieces I mentioned. And the last part was a dean's review. You may be thinking, that's a lot of sections. I wonder how many metrics there were. There were 18, which we came out swinging. And this is where the Goldilocks piece comes in, because we came out with a lot. We had a lot. And so going from the past program review efforts to this one, it infused a ton of data. The reports were worked on in November and spanned into January. And it was from the previous year. And while I wanted to roll it out to all of our programs, initially we limited it to just our specially accredited programs, because in going through the process, we hit some data issues, some infrastructure issues, and building out all this new cool stuff. And so we limited it then to our programs who, have to do some annual reporting to external parties to make sure they could keep that going. But held on to that piece as we go further on to make sure we can expand it. But you can see a little bit there that the report was really straightforward. It would have some text boxes of like, what are you doing in this space, or what's some context for your program to know. It would then clearly show targets around the metrics. That's the color coding there of like the pink and the white and the green, areas of concern, area of competence, area of excellence. And then we would just tell them what their data was. And so they had that put into the report. That's what they received. So really all they needed to do was interpret it and write up their responses. But then they also had a dashboard for really digging more into the data and getting additional context. And so here's just more of like what the report looked at and when we'd ask them for action items or insights or interpretation. But I'm including what I consider at this point some ugly images because I want to show you where we were to where we are. So here was an example where we would, and we built all this in Power BI. Using some we did our data pull of looking at assignments and program information and aligned that, and then had static spreadsheets that we uploaded to Power BI. But this is an example showing for one of our programs the performance across their program learning outcomes. The kind of middle bar there, the horizontal one, was the target of 70% of achievement. And you can see that all of their PLOs were above it, although PLO2 was kind of the lowest of them all. And you can see the total PLO measure there on the side, the 97.5. But I also want to share, here's where we looked at retention rate and persistence, and we had a lot of metrics kind of crammed on a screen. And this was phase 1, and it was a great first phase, right? It was a big change from what our university had gone through, and we were pretty proud of it, especially because we did a lot of it on our own. This wasn't budgeted or planned with our IT people, so we did a lot of this ourselves. But we then paved the way to ask for more resources for the next cycle. So phase 2, we formalized the steps in the timing of the process, right? We had gone through it once, and we got feedback from the colleges, the faculty, our partners, and really then hammered home a bit more like our preparation phase, the maintenance phase of checking our data, making sure outcome maps are updated, the actual reporting season, which we pushed back a little bit. So earlier in the fall to, again, give a little more breathing room to do the report, but also so that it wasn't an immediate getting this data and going into budget or strategic planning. And then also by moving it up earlier, it gave more time for then working on actions to implement. But this second roll around, again, following the Goldilocks journey, it was a lot before, then we really trimmed down. So we got those 18 metrics down to 7. Student satisfaction, credits to goal, program margin, term-to-term persistence, completion, PLO achievement, and ULO achievement. PLO, program learning outcomes, ULOs, university learning outcomes. But even though we trimmed down the metrics, we got a lot more detail. We integrated a lot more underlying data and course level information. We provided sample size for all of the metrics for context. We connected student identity for disaggregation. This was huge. We were one of the first dashboards that the institution has that actually had the ability to disaggregate by student identity on multiple fronts. But we did all this while still providing the same support. We had an assigned low-key person. We gave them the opportunity to engage with marketing, student affairs, our partnerships team, and we provided more meetings, more resources, and more feedback opportunities to make sure that we were successful with this round 2, because this round 2 was for everybody. So the first round was just for those 14 accredited programs. This round was for all 35 programs that were active and doing the reporting. It inspired more storytelling. I saw some of that in the chat too. This inspired storytelling, celebration of their program health. Again, it informed strategy and actions for student success, and it really helped connect some continuous quality improvement efforts across the institution, right? People would, the student affairs folks that were helping with these reports and giving feedback could see how the work they're doing is helping the students in the classroom and vice versa. And as I said, we adjusted the timeline a little bit. We made the reports come a little earlier. So last cycle reporting came out in November. Here we moved it up to August. Reports were due on October, and we provided support in between. Our actual report itself stayed relatively the same. You can see kind of on the left there that we still had our targets, right? And we would put the data in for the program. We streamlined a little bit the analysis and interpretation section. And one of the other big changes we made is in the first phase, after their reflection and interpretation, we would ask, like, what actions are you going to take? And we did that by section of the report. And some of the feedback we heard is that they really wanted that all together. So we then made this table that's on the right here that at the end of the report, it was one big table. And so it would say, all right, section 1, what are your actions? What are you going to do about it? Section 2, what are your actions? So that's all in one spot, which then makes it really easy to check up on, and you don't have to scan each section of the report to look at those pieces. But the really exciting thing was the enhancement to our Power BI. And so you see up there where it says in parentheses with help, because again, that first round, we did it on our own. We were, using static spreadsheets and relying on our own knowledge of Power BI. But this second time around, we got resources. We got commitment from IT to help us with this. And so they helped really add to the Power BI. As you can see, there's a lot more clarity and clear boxes. And you can see not only do we have completion rate by the program, but you can also look at it by concentration. Then you can see it by gender, budget group, ethnicity, and those are filters at the top, as well as then you could dynamically click on the respective bars and the different cards on the page. We also had additional detail where you could see at the bottom of the page the breakout between specific programs and the respective detail. And so this is just an example of where the color coding would update in real time, right? Depending on your filtering of a program or looking overall. So again, this just having more IT help and support here radically upped the stakes for the reporting. Here's probably the one I'm most excited about. So you remember program review, it was just those, or program learning outcomes, the PLO assessment section, it was just those real big bars, right? And that's all that was on the screen. And then the 70% target and the 97.5 in the corner. We upgraded to this, which again, it has that program learning outcomes summary. It had like a sub PLO summary, because believe it or not, some of our programs have sub PLOs because they're that detailed. And so we wanted to capture that. And you can see that there's additional targets. We have a graduate target, an undergraduate target. We have more pieces at the top in terms of filters and oversight elements. But one of the coolest things that I think is we were able to bring in a lot more of that underlying data. And so here you can see where so we had the overall performance on the previous slide, but here's where we can see where all this data is coming from. You can see the distribution across courses. You can see the number of how many assignments are pulling from that course per program learning outcome. And then when you look below that image, you can then see the raw data, the raw detail of this program, this assignment, this is how many students, this is how many of them met the target and what that percentage looks like. So again, a lot of this underlying data that fed our first version of the report, but we couldn't quite bring to life like this, that now we can, which has been incredible, and our faculty love it. And we also had some updated expectations for our collaborators, right? That was some of the feedback we got first time around was, oh, well, it was great to have these conversations, but we didn't really know what we should share. And sometimes faculty were asking us questions and we didn't feel comfortable sharing that because the reporting cycle for program review didn't align with the reporting cycle for marketing or,
On my mind. When we have two cohorts that do an OSCE on the same day, we do.
Oh, okay. Didn't know if that was just an urgent question somebody had. But yeah, so this slide shows these were the prompts that we gave folks. These were the things we asked them of, hey, come ready to answer these questions, right? And this is what should help frame the conversation and collaboration between you all. And you all can go beyond this, but this is where we'll start. So I want to pause there and just say that the next couple slides give some examples of how to think about taking some of this information to talk roles, responsibility, collaboration, documentation of efforts with your people. Because again, you may not have the ability to radically redesign your program review approach like we did. You may not have the tools or the resources to do that. And so I'm not saying like you've got to go out and get Power BI, and I'm not saying you have to radically change your stuff, but the core lesson and what we did, aside from it looking really cool, is that there was a progression, right? All those current state things, those X's that we weren't having happen, we fixed those, or we've gone a long way in fixing those in a short amount of time. And it hasn't been too fast and too much that our faculty haven't been able to keep up. They've actually really enjoyed the process. They've enjoyed the journey too. They really appreciated this latest version of the report being slimmer in terms of metrics, but more robust in terms of the detail and the insights they get from it. And as you can imagine, we're moving to phase 3. And so true to the Goldilocks story, we're hoping it'll be really our sweet spot of we're going to add a few more metrics because we know there's some gaps in some of the things we're seeing, but we're not going to go back to the full 18. And we're really starting to normalize in on this behavior now that every program's gone through it, and some programs have gone through it twice. So I just want to click through these case study pieces just to show you, and I can always go back, but I kind of want to get to questions from folks and dialogue. But these were some insights to action things you might think about of, the department chair shares the annual report. The PLO results are below the target, and your team is ready. You have colleagues around to think about and make sense of this data. These are some questions you could ask, right? So if the PLO results are down, persistence and retention is up, but credit taking is below target and completion is too, what does that mean? Well, faculty shouldn't be alone in trying to make sense of that. And so here's ways that, with these different perspectives, we can all be talking about this. We can all come together and try and make sense of this because it's complex, right? If people had easy solutions to completion and program health and student success, then they'd be making a lot of money and selling it to the schools that want to pay for it, right? But it's not that simple. And we all need to come together and share our collaborative perspectives to make it work. Here's another one. A department chair is committing to this monthly meeting. Faculty are going to be there. You have control of the agenda and what should be talked about, right? And given the audience, what do you think we should discuss? So knowing your most recent report, right? And knowing the opportunity with the captive audience, what do you put on the agenda? What data are you talking about? How are you maximizing the perspectives that are there? And how might this change if instead of it being a department chair meeting, it's a school or college meeting, right? So different perspective, different people coming. Likewise, we might think about program orientation, right? New faculty coming in, what do we share with them, right? You're part of the orientation process. You have the ability to interface with these part-time faculty who want to know how they fit into the larger picture, these full-time faculty who want to know what they're going to own or their role in the program. So what are you going to share? Curriculum apps, showcase that, past data, talk to them about the current process. These are all very realistic scenarios that I hope you all identify or regularly could see yourselves plugging into. And these are really important to think about too, because again, to make movements in making assessment more meaningful, more robust, more streamlined, it's not just about the reporting side of things, right? It's about the insights, it's about the accessibility, it's about the engagement, the authentic engagement in this work and empowering people and building up their confidence that they can do this work and you can help them and bringing other people in along the way. So, like I said, as we're looking to phase 3, we're going to further automate things and streamline where we can, see where we can leverage potentially AI with overall programmatic insights and metrics. Because Power BI is a Microsoft tool, so potentially use Copilot to help summarize those metrics, to help with the insight piece, or at least give an initial starting point for faculty to build from. Going to find ways to also better project manage the action items on the back end because we're providing all the support for them to get to the report and the process. And then we've heard that they feel a little lonely and unsupported on then enacting change. So we're thinking of how we can help with that, as well as increasing the transparency and storytelling that we're doing. And as I said, we were one of the first dashboards for the university to have many identities and demographics baked in there. And it's been inspiring more of that across other metrics. And again, with our process and all the things we did, we gained a ton of trust and support. We were at a recent, I was at a recent faculty event, and I was the only one there for my team, and I had multiple faculty stop me and say, "Gosh, I wish Megan was here, or I wish Huda was here," right? Because they're such a partner in this process, and we love to be around them and talk to them. And so, like that's the type of stuff that those are those intangible values and success metrics of a good assessment culture, as well as a good assessment office that I love for sure. And yeah, it positioned us as necessary partners, desired partners. It elevated the importance of the assessment work, right? It actually put student learning data alongside these other institutional KPIs, which that's not always the case, right? Often the institutions are talking about completion, persistence, retention, and somewhere in a distant or other conversation, if a conversation at all, they talk about student learning. And again, it just further situated and gave more time with our seasonality to program review in relation to other institutional activity. And yeah, we increased our reporting, obviously, by adding more programs to enhance, which is great. Now, some of that was somewhat, unfortunately, the way that happened, but it's been great. So my big takeaways, encouragements for you all is talking to your faculty about what matters. What are the things you can minimize or remove as barriers to this work? Be willing to change things, templates, timelines, support, finding partners to help make these data dreams possible. Put in the extra effort that's needed, right, for the equitable insights. We had to work with our IT folks and others to really help fit in some of these disaggregated demographic pieces, but it was worth it. And again, it not only helped our process, but helping the rest of the university too. And really try to center conversations around program quality, right? It's really easy, especially with everything going on, to think about enrollment and enrollment concerns and financial concerns and staffing or interpersonal issues. But remember why we're here, right? We're here for student success and the programs that they're interested in, and that we should be thinking about continuous improvement and betterment to best serve them, not just what do we need to do to check the box to please outside parties and just following a process because it's a process. Questions, comments, concerns. I see one in the chat right now of what software did we use to house the curriculum mapping? Good question. We actually don't have any software. That's something that we're trying to address. Thankfully, I've rallied some additional perspectives across the institution to throw their hat in the ring in terms of thinking about a content management system that goes beyond just curriculum mapping, but could be some other things as well. But for right now, it's good old spreadsheet. Every outcome map that each program has, they have their own spreadsheet. We maintain a master one that has that we've pulled together all of their outcome mapping and the alignment to the assignments. And so as you can imagine, it's thousands, if not close to a million rows of all these different alignment pieces, which is very tedious and manual to maintain. And so we're trying to find better ways to do that. We already iterated from phase 1 to phase 2 in terms of streamlining that a little bit, and building it out the first time made it easy then just to update when we got the updates between phase 1 and phase 2. But there's still more work we can do to make that better. And ideally would love to get it in a system, but that's where even with the system, you still have to have something to put it in the first place. So you got to start somewhere. Hope that helps. Amanda, see your hand raised.
My question actually follows up wonderfully with that, because I'm in a very similar situation. I've built all of ours in Smartsheet. So I've got these dashboards. And so the dilemma that I'm having, and I love your insight, is how to create marketing or whatever it is to get faculty to go and look at it. Like it's something on the outside. You create these beautiful things. What are some suggested mechanisms to get faculty to know where these resources are consistently, besides the mail all and the consistent reminders of presenting at department chairs? If you have any recommendations for that, then I would love to see it, because we're in a very similar situation.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, that's why and I could only show so much, but at the beginning of the reports, we have some check boxes of like, what's the state of your curriculum map, right? Is it incomplete? Is it complete, but people don't really use it or know where it is? Or is it like complete and people are aware of it, right? So we kind of mix scales, and I'm butchering our actual language, but we get at both those things of, is it complete, but also is it being used? Because if it's complete and just sitting on a shelf, that's really not helping people too much, especially for all the potential things that curriculum map could be helping. And same thing too with, is your information in the catalog up to date? Is the information on the website up to date? And so while people can be doing this other times and ways, and marketing could be checking that, because it's their program, right? You're the department chair. This is your program. We say, like, you need to have some accountability and onus in this to at least once a year check this information. And so we ask them to do that. We ask them to check the box, right, on the report, so that if nothing else, it's one single instance when they're looking to do that. So it's a bit of forced fun by nature of the report, but the hope too is that by doing this work and in an ongoing way, soon maybe we could take those things out of the report, because they'll get in the habit of doing it, or as they're working with marketing as partners on the report, they'll establish some rapport and some consistency in working together to make sure things are updated, especially when there's really cool things to celebrate about a program's health and their changes and their improvements. Marketing is always starved for content, and so program review can help feed that, and they can be setting up regular touch bases outside of just the program review process. So that's another thing too, with while right now we have real intentional connection between those collaborators and department chairs, the hope is that we won't have to keep forcing those connections, that naturally they'll see the value in the engagement that they're doing and just be meeting on their own. And we're already seeing some of that happen for some programs, but until it's a bit more consistent, we're going to keep it in part of the process.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Shanti.
Joe, what software are you using to house the data curriculum map, all of that stuff? Because we have Weave and we find it kind of disappointing.
Yeah, that's what I was saying to Amy in the chat. Her comment. We don't use any technology. We don't have anything. It's all just in spreadsheets.
Wow. SharePoint?
We have this, we put the spreadsheets in SharePoint in a centralized place so that everyone can see it and everyone can get there. But yeah, we then take those and put them in one master spreadsheet, and then that's what we use to upload and be a connection point with the data we're pulling from the LMS and that we're uploading into Power BI.
You use Canvas, Brightspace, or Blackboard?
Canvas.
Canvas, okay. We switched to SUNY switched to Brightspace, so we're still trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is one thing we're trying to get better at, because right now they had pulled the Canvas data into this reporting tool called ClickView, ClickSense. And so what we've been doing is downloading and connecting to the ClickView and ClickSense data. But as you can imagine, it's a little, the data is taking a long journey, right? It's going from the LMS to this ClickView, ClickSense, and then we're taking it and further manipulate. So I'm trying to work with our BI and data teams to just pull what we need directly from the LMS, since we know the formatting and we know what we need. And to that end, to Julie's question, faculty don't have to enter any data into like results. We take care of that for them. The one thing we do ask is in their program spreadsheets, they have to make changes to their curriculum mapping and their assignments, because that's what's in the outcome map spreadsheets is their courses, their alignment between their program learning outcomes and university learning outcomes, and then those key assignments that they're saying we should be pulling from. So so what we do is we give them a little bit of break. So reports are done in October. We kind of let things lie for a bit. And then in the spring, we re-engage with them to say, okay, are there any updates for your curriculum map? Any updates to your assignments? Updates to your target? Like anything else? And we work with them on that, because again, if they're not the most, if they don't like the format of their outcome map, or that's a barrier, right? Like we meet with them and we help get the updates in there as necessary. And that's usually pretty quick, because, for the most part, programs aren't radically changing from year to year. So it's usually just a confirmation that everything's okay, or there's a small change here or there. And then we're trying to maintain our master spreadsheet in real time so that we then don't have a real big backlog of updates and cross-checking everything when we know it's just a few pieces we need to update. So yeah, it's very little faculty data entry or maintenance of things. We're really trying to keep those up to date and minimize the amount that and who all might be touching those, so that we have some consistency and accuracy of source of truth data. Yeah. The signature assignment piece, yeah, it's something that it's just kind of part of the institutional culture, and it's something that worked really well at my last institution as well. As faculty had a lot of freedom to change a lot of other things, but we really said, like, these few assignments, and I mean few, like I think right now what we're trying to hold, although some programs do more, but 2 to 3, maybe up to 5 per program learning outcome. So you can imagine, like, that's not even touching all the courses in the program, right? So to the point of faculty agency to teach courses the way they want, there's a lot of courses and a lot of assignments they can do whatever they want on, as long as their department chair says it's okay and it's still aligned to the learning outcomes. But there's a few of those key assignments that we're like, yeah, you can't touch this one. Or one of the other cool things that we did where you could allow them to make changes is a cool thing about this institution is one of the things that was in place before I got here. So credit to what was here is in the rubrics for assignments, they made some consistent rows for the program learning outcomes. So if program learning outcome 1 is about, I don't know, let's say for critical thinking, there's a rubric row for that program learning outcome in that program about critical thinking. And then whenever there's one of those assignments that has that, they would just plop that in the rubric. And so in that way, even if the faculty member adjusts the assignment a bit, but we know like this course, this part in the program, this is an assignment we're going to pull, or we need to pull data from this program for that PLO. Even if the assignment is a little different, we're still pulling it from the same part in the student's experience and their journey in the program. And we're still pulling that same content of the program learning outcome, even if the assignment's a little different, which we can always note, right? Like the actual assignment may vary, but we're still covering the content of PLO1 and measuring PLO1 in a consistent way. So that's also been a helpful thing. But I will say that for the most part, our faculty here are not wildly deviating from the particular assignment, but that's a way around that, I would say. If your faculty do kind of have that freedom to take different approaches, is well, then make some consistency in the rubric so that at least that's the consistent part of we're pulling this regardless of whether it came from a paper or a presentation or a test or whatever, but we're consistently pulling this piece.
Joe, maybe you shared this and I apologize if I missed it, but how big is Excelsior? How many faculty are you working with in programs?
Oof. I'll say programs because
Okay.
faculty number may be a bit trickier for me. We have, like I said, we have, I think, 37 degree programs, and we serve about 10,000 students. Our enrollment numbers fluctuated a bit because we have a lot of adult learners and a lot of continuing ed learners. Fun fact about Excelsior is we were founded as a degree completion institution by the state of New York. They told the state of New York, they said, any students who have some college and no degree, send them to, at the time it was Regents College, and they did it out of the state of education department for New York State. Well, as you can imagine, they got flooded with people and students who wanted to finish. And so they spun it off into a legit full college instead of just trying to run it out of a education department. And over time, the institution said, hey, well, we're not just a place where you can come to finish, it's a place where you can start too. But because of that history, we still get a lot of people who are coming with just a couple credits left to finish a degree. And so because of that, recently we've been trying to play around with our definition of an active student, because we had some students who, like, were on the books for like 10 years, like taking a course at a time. And so that's why the number is a little fuzzy. Is we had a little higher number. We were closer to 15,000, but then as we made that like definition change of active student, it brought the number down to closer to about 10,000 in terms of actively enrolled course taking students.
Used to be the Regents College.
Yep. Oh, that's awesome, Joanna. Thanks for sharing. But yeah, so hopefully the size, and we offer associates through masters, and we're going through the process right now of applying to start a DBA. So we're dipping our toe in the doctoral waters. But otherwise, yeah, we have associates through master's degrees that we currently offer. Yeah, good question, Julie. I'm in the infancy of that here at this institution because, again, given the journey we've been on, I'm trying not to do too much too fast, and so, but we're right at that point right now. And actually, as I've been talking to faculty about it in our assessment committees, they've been hungry for it, right? They're saying we have we're so excited to have all this data at our fingertips now, and we went through the reporting process and we feel like we know so much. Now, what do we do? I said, now you talk about it and tell people about it and share it. But as you can imagine, that can be tricky, especially if you've never done it before, or also, sometimes when you talk about sharing or storytelling like that, they think, okay, how do I then tell a story about this huge report? Which may not be the most appealing aesthetically thing to look at. So I've been giving them examples and different ways in which they can do that. And I've been trying to encourage them to try these things and share it back so then I can share these more broadly. And what I love, and I told him, I was like, dude, you get the award for assessment champion this year. I had that meeting with our assessment committee. 2 weeks later, a faculty member emails me and says, hey, we just had like our pre-term kickoff meeting that we do every term to talk to our faculty who are teaching a course that term and just to answer questions and remind them of their assignments and everything. And he said, yeah. And so I made sure to talk about how our term-to-term persistence number was really high. Like it was designated an area of excellence for the institution. And one of the, like one of the top across all of our programs. And I said, first of all, that's amazing because great, simple example of sharing a data point. But also, it was a really smart example because if you think about it, here he is as a department chair talking to his faculty about to teach their courses for the term, right? And what is term-to-term persistence? It's a demonstration of students successfully moving from one course to the next. So what better motivator for faculty, especially as it's coming off the holidays, and so they're gearing up for the year. What better motivator to say, hey, we so appreciate the work you're going to do in this course, and we're here to answer any questions, but we want you to know, like, look at this stat. Look how strong our program is performing with students going from course to course. You all play a part in that. And what a nice little boost of confidence and thanking your faculty for the work that they do while also sharing some data. And so like I told him, I was like, that's perfect, that's amazing, that's incredible, I'm going to sing your praises the rest of this year. But it was also just a good example that to point out to people, like, it doesn't have to be this big elaborate presentation, it doesn't have to be this full report, it can just be as small as that. It can just be sharing and celebrating a data point at a meeting. It can also be saying, we know this was an area of concern. We're super excited to talk about, we're kicking off this task force, or we're making this change, or we've already budgeted to revamp this course because we've heard X, Y, and Z. Like, we know that stuff's happening anyway, but what a great way to tie it into the reports and show everyone, internal and external, that we're making data-informed decisions and that's part of that storytelling. And once you start doing that, people won't stop. And they'll want to do more of it, and they'll want to pull in and wonder about other data sets that you can be telling similar stories, or how we can bring these stories together. But you just have to start somewhere. And as I shared, like, it's been a big thing I keep pushing, and I'm trying to actively make sure internally when I'm doing professional development that I'm pulling faculty along with me. Right? Like I'm doing a presentation later this month. Well, sorry, early February, so in a couple weeks, about our university learning outcomes. Just a history and where we are, what they are, for all faculty to see. But you better believe I'm pulling in faculty to be there and talk about their experience mapping those outcomes, their experience looking at the data and their program review reports to make meaning of it. Because obviously I can share that, but it's going to mean more when it's coming from their peer, right? It's going to mean more when they're hearing about it from another faculty member. And so you can find these little ways to do it, and hopefully it catches on, but at least then you got some good examples.
And as your moderator, Joe, I'm obligated to tell you, you are right at your time.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you for being here. Enjoy the rest of your conference, the symposium. I flashed my content, my email information, my bio is up to date in the event, so you all can reach out to me. Feel free. And as you can tell, I'm always excited to talk about assessment, so I'm happy to chat with anybody about those things. But thank you for coming, and I'll see you later.